Welcome to the lesson Constants and Variables. Constants and variables are fundamental to programming. What are constants and variables? They can be considered as the containers where we put in our data. The difference between constants and variables is that constant is a type of container where once you put in a data, you cannot change it. Cannot change it. And variable, here you put a data, you can change it any number of time. Okay. So how do you declare those? How do you declare a constant? The keyword for the constant is let, and followed by the name of the constant. Assume we want to put in first name into this constant, so we'll name it appropriately first name, and let's put John in it. So this line has declared a constant first name and put John in it. Since constants cannot be changed, so if we try to do something like this, later on put let's say David inside first name, the program will complain. Cannot assign a value. First name is a let constant, so it's a constant, you cannot do it. But this thing is allowed in variables. You declare a variable by using the keyword var, where. Okay, so since in the same program you cannot use the same variable name again, so we'll have to change this variable name. Let's put 1 in front of it. Yeah, this is fine. Okay, so if a variable, if we're dealing with a variable, you can change it. In fact, you can change it any number of time. Later on we can assign any other thing here. Let's say we can assign a Paul here. Okay, so we can assign reassign a variable any number of time, but we cannot do that with constants. After the introduction of constants and variables, we have to talk about declaration and initialization. For any variable or constant, there are actually 2 steps involved in their in sort of using them in the program. Let me illustrate it with the help of example. For example, you could have said something like this: variable last name and colon, and just wrote the data type that it is expected to contain. Since we haven't talked about data types yet, we'll definitely cover them in detail in future videos, but for now you know that there is a string data type, so we'll use that string here. So this line is the declaration, because this declares that the variable last name is going to be of type string. Okay, so far last name contains nothing in it, it just shows that it is going to contain a string. Okay, and later on you can assign any value to it, let's say Nash, and this step is called initialization, because we have initialized, we have put in the value for the first time in the variable last name, so this step is called initialization. So this is important. Sometimes you can do the both steps at the same time as well. For example, let's last name 1 string is equal to Nash. This is perfectly fine. It is declaring and initializing on the same line. One thing about constants, you can do the same steps for the constant as well. If this was a let variable and we have to change the name, if it was a let variable, you can perfectly do that. You can declare and initialize. You can initialize once, but once you have initialized it, you cannot then change the value. So let us try to do something. Let's say put something else here, put Hillary in it. So last name is equal to Hillary. The program complains a mutable value last name 2 may only be initialized once. So it is essentially saying that you can put a value in a constant once, but not any other time, but not anymore. So if it was a variable, you could do it many times, but constant, you cannot do it. So this concludes our lesson on constants and variables.